Today, unlike last year when he got wrecked by Logano, is a good day to be a Jeff Gordon fan. I'm glad I wore all my Gordon stuff today. If you can't tell, I'm pretty happy because literally nothing else happened in this race except for a Jeff Gordon paint scheme going to victory lane. What is this now? Four race weekends in a row that Ross Chastain has been one of the top headlines. Darlington, Kansas, Dover, Talladega. I think Martinsville was before that. Martinsville was the last time Chastain was not one of the top headlines. At Talladega, Chastain triggered a big crash on one of the final restarts. That was not 100% his fault. It was kind of 50-50. You could argue either way, but still, he was involved in the starting of it, so people were blaming him. People were mad at him. Then the next week at Dover, it was his fault. He wrecked a lap car into Kyle Larson and took him out, and Chastain continued on, took out a lap car in Larson. The next week at Kansas, Chastain gets into it with Noah Gragson, and after the race, there is a physical fight, and Chastain punches Gragson in the face in self-defense. And then this week, yet again, Ross Chastain is in the headlines because him and Kyle Larson are idiots. So yes, it's not just Chastain, it's also Larson in this case. Earlier in this race, on a restart, Chastain was on the inside, Larson on the outside, and Chastain ran Larson up the track. He didn't wreck Larson. I don't even know if Larson hit the wall. If he did, it was barely. And, Larson lost 4 or 5 positions out of it. And, it's understandable to be upset in that situation, but not to the point where you have to do anything extreme back, in my opinion. But apparently Larson has been holding some frustration against Chastain back at Dover. Remember, as I just said, Chastain took out Brennan Poole, and Brennan Poole in the process clipped Larson and took Larson out of the race. Also back at Talladega, when Chastain was a part of that big wreck on one of the final restarts that was triggered by him and Noah Gragson making contact, Kyle Larson was taken out in that, and that's when he got T-boned on the right side door. And Cliff Daniels made it apparent after these two had their incident and they were both taken out of the race. Cliff Daniels said that is now 3 times, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was basically, that is now 3 times that the one car has taken us out, Chevrolet. He directly said Chevrolet because they both drive Chevrolets. He's saying the manufacturer's got to step in. But yes, as I was saying, Chastain ran Larson up the track. He might have skimmed the wall, but he definitely had to lift out of it. He lost 3-4 positions on the restart from 1st and 2nd to about 5th, maybe 6th at worst. And of course, Larson decided to return the favor. One of the late restarts with under 20 to go, Larson had the lead. He chose the inside. Chastain, if we're being honest, Chastain jumped the restart. Larson was the control car, but he never got the jump. Chastain jumped the restart, in my opinion. And Larson went into turns 1 and 2 with no craps given. Just ran straight into the corner without lifting. We didn't really see it because Martin Truex Jr. was a little bit busy taking out the entire field. And while we missed that, Larson was running Chastain into the fence. In this process, Chastain gained the lead, and he was once again the control car. And on the next restart, me and a bunch of other people called this. I literally called it. I've said on Twitter, I said they're about to have a Senna Prost moment where they just floored into each other. And that's about what happened. Chastain was the control car, went into turn 1, full send, hits Larson. Larson doesn't lift. Chastain doesn't lift. Larson clips him. They're in the wall together, spinning down the racetrack. And the funniest part is on Larson's onboard, after they hit the wall, usually when a guy's like into someone like this, into the wall, they usually lift off so they can break off and not get more damage. But at this point, Larson does not give a crap, and Larson is literally like flooring it through Chastain until he gets through. Chastain was done for the day. I think Larson was done for the day. If not, he finished in the 20s. I guess we'll go through the finishing results here in a minute. And they were both taken out of the race, essentially, battling for the win. And in my opinion, they're both idiots. They're both very talented race car drivers. Larson's a champion. Chastain is a multi-time Cup winner, points leader heading into today. Both of these guys have had really good years. Chastain hasn't won yet, but as I said, he's leading the points. Larson has 2 wins this year. They've had really good years so far. And yes, Chastain ran Larson up the track, into the wall, whatever it was. Yes, Larson, in a sense, got his revenge by putting Chastain into the wall, but that last restart, or that second to last restart before they were taken out, they were both idiots, in my opinion. Like, there was no need for that. You've both got it even, essentially. Chastain, you don't have to run him back into the wall. Larson, when he hits you, you don't have to floor it through him. Larson over the radio said that he's a hack. That's a very common phrase now. Denny Hamlin called Bowman a hack. Who else has been called a hack? I think Alan Gustafson called Logano a hack once. Like, hack is a very used term in NASCAR. I never hear it anywhere else, but NASCAR, very much used word. Chastain after the race said he was going full send, essentially. Larson went straight to his hauler, has not made comments yet. I'm sure he will at some point. If he does, I will obviously update you on that. But I thought the funniest part of this whole ordeal was Bill Elliott in the commentator booth. Bill Elliott, the father of Chase Elliott, and also a Cup Series champion, Hall of Famer, named to the greatest 75 drivers of NASCAR history. He was in the commentary booth today for Stage 3, so he got to see all this crap go down late in this race. And Bill Elliott, the exact quote here was, "Children, put them into the sandbox together and they can't play." That's about right. These two were acting like literal children in race cars. Look, man, I understand hard racing. I understand things happen. You got to get back at people. You got to get even and all this stuff, but it was absurd there at the end. Like, last year I was upset with Logano wrecking Byron there for the win after, pinching him into the wall. I think Logano had a right to bump and run him. I think Logano had the right to get back at him in a sense, but I didn't think he had the right to completely wreck him and take Byron from fighting for the win to finishing, 13th? And then this instance, they're both fighting for the win. They had a small incident earlier that really didn't affect either of their day because late in this race, they were back to 1-2. And Larson just goes and puts him in the wall for whatever reason to get back at him. And then the last incident, they just obliterate each other for literally no reason other just to be pissed at each other. It makes no sense to me. If I'm Justin Marks and Rick Hendrick, I'm sitting them down, telling them don't be morons next time. Like for Larson, Larson's usually a pretty level-headed guy. He doesn't get pissed off a lot. He doesn't like to fight people. He's literally talked about this whole weekend how he doesn't like to get in physical confrontations. But that doesn't mean he doesn't get hot-headed in the race car. He's had incidents before. He said things on the radio. He's put people in the wall before, like Justin Haley in the Clash last year. So he's not clean all the time. He has his moments, but Larson's usually not a guy who we think of as getting back at someone in a sense. Now, obviously, if he feels he's been wronged, he's going to do something about it. He's not just going to let people, take advantage of him on the track. But that's just for a Cup champion, especially for Kyle Larson. Like if someone else who's had incidents like this before, who has, had run-ins with people and has, gotten revenge before, it would make sense to me, like Harvick, but Harvick's had a lot more years. Harvick, people have gotten into him, put him in the wall, and he's made sure to get retaliation. But, Larson just doesn't seem like that guy, so I was a little bit surprised to see it out of him. And then Chastain, we know Chastain's recent history. But, yeah, it was a little absurd there if you ask me. Once we get Larson's comments, it'll be quite interesting, but oh boy. Yeah, despite that, it was William Byron in the 24 getting his third win of the season and also the 100th win for the number 24 car. Of course, Jeff Gordon had 93 of those wins. William Byron holds the other 7. Chase Elliott with a big fat 0, which is just really weird to think. Elliott was in that car 2 years, 3 years maybe, and couldn't get it done there. It took him till he got to the 9 car, but it's been Jeff Gordon and William Byron. Obviously, Jeff Gordon holding a very, very high percentage. Well, 93% of the wins. It's 100 wins, 93 out of 100. That's 93%. There you go. But big for that car number, historic car number in NASCAR history. Of course, the greatest driver of all time did the majority of that work. But Byron trying to get his numbers up there. in a beautiful paint scheme. That throwback to the 1998 All-Star race, and that car, it's redemption for Byron. It's redemption for that paint scheme. That paint scheme, I think he was leading on the last lap of the All-Star race, and the car broke down, and Gordon didn't win. And then, of course, Byron last year in this race, lap and a quarter to go, he's leading, and Byron gets dumped by Logano for the win, finishes 13th. So redemption for Byron, redemption for the Gordon throwback paint scheme. But yeah, we saw a lot happen today. There were some wrecks. The first two stages were pretty dull, but then on the last lap of stage 2, Martin Truex Jr. and Ross Chastain crashed there, which was very chaotic. It was not Ross Chastain's fault in this instance. Truex 2 times today. Like, Truex is a champion. He's a great driver. We don't see a lot of mistakes out of him, but he made 2 massive mistakes today that were just very uncharacteristic of him. And yeah, I guess we'll talk about that when we look at the finishing results. It was William Byron getting his first Darlington win in the Cup Series. As I said, the 3rd win of the year for him. The only driver with 3 wins this year. His teammate Kyle Larson has a couple of wins, but I think that's the only multi-time winner we've seen this year. No, Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch, how could I forget? I was there for one of them. But yes, Kyle Busch, William Byron, and Kyle Larson, all multi-time winners, but Byron, the only one with 3. The most wins he's ever had in a single season, but once again, as I said with last year, he's got to keep it up. This was about the time last year that they just absolutely collapsed, and through the summer were struggling, but they got to keep this momentum up. They got to be consistent through the whole year. But right now, they're looking like a top championship contender. They got to keep it up, though. Second place, Kevin Harvick, solid run for him, or really good result, but he was not irrelevant today, but he was not running as good as I thought he would. Back half of the top 10, 11th to 15th at times. I expect him to run better here. I know SHR struggled, but Harvick usually always shows up at Darlington or short tracks, so I was expecting him to run a little bit better, but I'm assuming that's more on SHR's end. They were irrelevant all day outside of him, but he avoided the late wrecks, the late chaos, the late stupidity. Gets up there, and massive respect to him there at the end. With all the chaos that had happened, with all the stupidity, as I said, Harvick could have very easily just wrecked Byron there, or, doored him into the wall or something, but Harvick opted to race him clean, and he's usually a pretty clean race car driver. I expect that out of Kevin Harvick, but with the way things have gone the past few weeks, the past couple of years, really, it's nice to see a race for the finish, be respectful, and for Kevin Harvick to do that, massive respect to him, but really good result for him either way, P2. Chase Elliott finishes 3rd somehow. Bad qualifying, qualified in the 20s, ran like 9th to 13th most of the day, but took advantage of the late chaos. In fact, he was involved in the big one that Truex triggered from the second row. Elliott was a row or 2 behind him, got involved in that. He was up against the wall, guys hitting him, and I was like, oh, Elliott's done. But they stayed out, only had minimal damage, tires weren't shredded, and Elliott holds on to finish 3rd. Bill Elliott said in the booth, that's a win for that team considering how they ran today, and I would agree. They really were a 9th to 13th place car, a 3rd place finish. They're making that points run look realistic, if you ask me. They haven't had winning speed yet since Elliott has returned from his injury, but they are closing in on the points in terms of pointing their way into the playoffs. I think we're a little bit more than halfway through the regular season, and I think pointing their way in, if they're not able to get a win, it's actually realistic here, especially if they're going to have runs like this. Brad Keselowski finishes 4th. A solid day for him. He started in the top 10, ran in the top 10 for a bit, but to get a 4th place, really good finish for him. RFK, as I said, has been really good this year compared to the last couple of years, especially last year. They were just really inconsistent, especially on the 6 side of things. But for Keselowski to get top 5 at Darlington, really good for him. Bubba Wallace, a top 5. He had a great car in the first half of this race, was top 5, top 3, even led a lap or 2. Looked really good at the beginning of the day, but then I think it was a bad pit stop. I can't remember if the car fell off the jack or what, but they had a bad pit stop, set them back into the 18th or so, and it just kind of ruined their day. Didn't have the track position, couldn't really get back up into the top 5. I think they may have been near the top 10 before that late crash, but avoids the late chaos and ends up finishing 5th, so really, really good day for him. 6th place, Harrison Burton, great day for him. He was top 15 most of the day, honestly, other than the penalty that he had, but he was able to avoid the chaos, and he finishes 6th. That's a great result for that team. 7th place, Kyle Busch was up in contention for this thing, but a bad late race pit stop ends up kind of costing them there. They end up finishing 7th, though. Justin Haley 8th, a really good run for him. 9th, Ryan Blaney. 10th, Chris Buescher, a double top 10 for RFK. Todd Gilliland 11th, another great run for Todd Gilliland after getting booted out of his seat for a few races. 12th place, Denny Hamlin, irrelevant most of the day, which is surprising for him at Darlington. Darlington, one of his better tracks, but outside of staying out on a green flag pit cycle and leading a couple laps, he was irrelevant all day. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 13th, top 10 almost all day long, but blew a tire due to a puncture with about 80 to go. Pit road speeding penalty somewhere in there, but they rallied back to get 13th. They were genuinely top 10 on speed all day. Very impressive. 14th, Christopher Bell. Technically, he's the one that caused all this because that last restart before Chastain and Larson started walling each other, Bell was in second, but he had a loose wheel and had to pit to get that thing tightened. And if they just get that lug nut tightened, we don't have to see Chastain and Larson wreck each other. So it's all Christopher Bell's fault. Not really, but they did have a top 5 run going, fighting for the win, but unfortunate on the pit road. Priest 15th, Gibbs 16th, Briscoe 17th, Logano 18th, 19th, Cindric, 20th, Kyle Larson. He just can't freaking get it done here, man. I mean, he has dominated so many races, been top 3, top 2, best car, whatever it's been, led laps, and he can't find a way to get it done. Whether it's the 400-miler or it's the Southern 500, Larson, Chip Ganassi, Hendrick, it doesn't matter. He has done so good at this track, everything right, but he can't get it done. Today, partially his fault. He had a car to win, but decides to mess around with Chastain. Almirola, Reddick, he was involved in a lot of wrecks. A lot of these guys were involved in the last wreck. I'll kind of cover that here when we get to the guy who caused them. Allmendinger, LaJoie, Jones, Gregson, Ty Dillon, Ryan Newman in his return to Cup Series action. He had a couple of incidents, was talking about his ribs. He took a couple hits and was talking about his ribs, and I was reading something that said he didn't get his seat fitted. I don't know how that happens, but hopefully he's okay. Raj Chastain, 29th. Four straight weeks. I can't wait to see how he makes the headlines at the All-Star race. But him and Larson, idiots this week. Barry, 30th, rough day for him. He hit the wall a couple of times. Just really rough day for him. Truex, 31st. Martin Truex Jr., he really did look good in the first half, dominated the first half of this race, but then wrecks himself at the end of stage 2. And then wrecks the field with about 15 to go on a restart. As I said, Truex, championship driver, all-time great driver. He is amazing, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but today, 2 uncharacteristic mistakes. Wrecks himself at the end of stage 2 and then wrecks the field with, what did I say, 15 to go? Row 2 inside, goes into turns 1 and 2 aggressively and just goes straight into Logano, doors Logano, gets into the fence, takes himself, Logano, and about 10 other cars out or something, caused a big pileup. I don't know what he was doing there, but Truex just, for some reason after that dominant first half of the race, just forgot how to drive. I don't know what his problem was, but Truex 31st, BJ McLeod 32nd, Michael McDowell 33rd, Daniel Suarez 34th, Austin Dillon 35th, and 36th, Brennan Poole. So yeah, it was quite the eventful Darlington race. William Byron wins again. Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson just were being very dumb today. And that was your Darlington race. Chastain continues to make the headlines. I don't know anymore. I guess we'll talk about this incident more tomorrow in a video, post-race video that we'll do tomorrow. But thanks for watching this. Like, subscribe, all that stuff if you enjoy the video, the post-race recap. I'll see you guys in the next video. As I said, tomorrow, probably covering the Chastain-Larson incidents. Yeah. But thanks for watching, and glad to see the Gordon throwback one.